everyone, and welcome to the November meeting of the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission. We will start with roll call.
Commissioner Olasani?
Here.
Commissioner Bicchetti?
Here.
Commissioner Chen? Here. Commissioner Marin?
Present.
Commissioner Onan? Here. Commissioner Savage? Commissioner Stone?
Here.
Okay, thank you so much. Are there any agenda changes, requests, or deletions for the evening?
Yes, I would like to delete the conversation I was going to have about working with the Santa Clara County HRC on the movies for tonight. I just haven't been able to communicate with them sufficiently.
Okay, so we're going to remove item number 4?
Yes, please.
Okay. Thank you. And do we have any oral communications from the public? Oh, and there's Nancy Shepherd, our wonderful liaison. Hi, Nancy. Hi.
Sorry, I'm late. I'm glad you found it. Sit by Commissioner Olasani.
Or if you want to sit here, wherever
you'd like to sit.
Okay, so no oral communications since we're alone tonight with staff. All right. So let's move on to our business items. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Approval of minutes. Gosh, I'm sorry. I'm always trying to get ahead of myself on those. All right. So the minutes we have are from October. We all had a chance to send in any changes or corrections to Mary. And does anyone want to make a motion to approve them?
I move to approve them.
All right. Is there a second? Commissioner Chen seconds. Should we take a vote? All in favor of approving the October minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone who opposes or abstains?
I abstain.
Oh, because it's here. All right, so
I'm abstaining too. I forgot. I wasn't here.
Oh, no. Okay, well, if we have 2 abstentions and 1 person absent, we have to approve them with 4.
We need at least 4. So what do we have?
1, 2, 3, 4.
We got it.
All right. Pulling it out at the last minute. That's how we do on the HRC. Okay, so the minutes are approved. All right, now we'll move on to our first business item. As you know, one of our responsibilities on the Human Relations Commission is recommending funding allocations for CDBG, and we are going to get an update from our wonderful Consuelo and someone I don't think I know, who is Mr. Weintraub.
That's right.
Because I'm used to seeing your partner in crime, Stephen Taylor, and so he's gone. So I'm trying to kind of get used to all the new faces. All right, so Consuelo, you can speak there, or if you want to come up and join us.
Sure, we are having some...
Is that okay if she speaks here with us? Yeah. Do you want to come up here, Consuelo?
So actually because the location of the laptop doesn't reach to the table, so direct your attention. Yes, but before I begin, Consuelo Hernandez, Senior Planner, and tonight I'm here to introduce our new CDBG coordinator. As I may have mentioned, I will be transitioning out of that role, and the city has hired Matt Weintraub. So he's here tonight. We thought this would be a really good opportunity to introduce him, and also because this year we're required to update or required to adopt a new 5-year strategic plan. Before this comes before you in February, we thought this would be a really good opportunity to introduce you to the process and then also show you what we've accomplished over the past 5 years. And please feel free to stop me anytime. So, as I mentioned, we receive our funding from the federal government directly. In order to receive those funds, we have to submit a 5-year strategic plan. It's referred to as a consolidated plan. And it addresses all of the priorities that we hope to, objectives and priorities that we hope to achieve over a 5-year period. And we use the public's help to identify housing priorities, economic development priorities, and general community development. As you may have received earlier, last month perhaps, a link to a survey. That's our needs assessment. So thank you very much for participating in that effort. It closes tomorrow. It closes on the 15th. So if you know of anybody that hasn't taken the survey and is interested, please let me know or go ahead and send them that link to the SurveyMonkey. And part of this, it serves as an application, but it's also a document, and it helps cities and counties make decisions on how they're proposing to use the investment of the CDBG dollars. And I know every year when we come back to the HRC and we ask you for funding recommendations, it's always a struggle on deciding what agencies to fund. And this is the perfect opportunity to start thinking about those priorities, those goals and objectives that will facilitate the selection of grantees come budget time. And also wanted to share the current low moderate income limits with you. As you're aware, the program does require that our beneficiaries be of low to moderate income. And currently, the threshold for individuals is $49,950 annually. And for a family of 4, it's less than $71,300 annually. So our beneficiaries have to meet those income limits in order for us to use CDBG funds for those types of activities. So this is just a simple diagram about what the planning process looks like. We're currently under the determining needs, and we are hoping to have that portion wrapped up by next week. We use the information gathered from the survey, from contacts with the nonprofits, and one-on-one consultations with members of the public to set priorities and identify resources. Then all of that informs the establishment of the goals. And then the HRC will receive a draft showing the goals, showing the objectives based on the information that we've collected. And again, we thought this would be a really good opportunity to introduce you to the process so that come February, when you see this big 175-page document, you're not overwhelmed. And we also want you to really focus on what the goals and the objectives should be. As I may have mentioned, it's really important for us to get those good and very clear goals now, because it's very difficult to amend the plan, and then it's even more difficult for you when you start looking at applications and making funding recommendations. So this time around, we want to make sure we capture those goals accurately and that our programs that we fund match those goals. We are doing this effort in conjunction with the county and the cities that don't receive the allocation from HUD directly. So this is a list of the participating jurisdictions. Commissioner Chen and Minka participated in one of our regional workshops, and this is a portion of the presentation that we're delivering to you tonight. And just wanted to share with you how we're collaborating on a continuous basis with our different partners in the county. And just as a little reference or a little update, we have 5 different funding categories in which to allocate our resources of CDBG. The most important is always our public service dollars, but as you know, we have a 15% cap on those services. And just wanted to give you a refresher on the types of services that can be funded under this category. This is typically, it's very similar to the HISRAP programs that you fund. Most of those would fall under the public service category. It includes services for homelessness, or persons who are homeless, energy conservation, services for senior citizens, and childcare. Under housing, you can allocate funding for homeowner rehabilitation. One of the issues in Palo Alto is because we have such a high income limit area, it's very difficult to find residents who meet the income limit restrictions. And so we don't have a homeowner rehabilitation program in Palo Alto. We did in the 80s, and we actually still receive some of those funds back into the program. When we bring the budget before you, we always have this discussion about program income and how does CDBG generate income. We issued loans in the 80s for homeowner rehabilitation, and when the owner sells their property or they want to pay the loan back, that's considered program income. And we reinvest that back into the program. That's why when you see the budget, you have this line item for program income. What is that? That is the program generating funds. Some of the other things that we've done, at least in the last 5 years under housing, is the rehabilitation of multifamily housing. Our last project was the CDWG Alma Gardens project, where we invested in the replacement of the roof, windows, painting, and some interior improvements that were needed.
Well, I was wondering, can I ask a question about the homeowner rehabilitation? So as you know, we have a BMR program here in Palo Alto, and some of the owners who are moderate to low income people have bought units in buildings that are now 30, 40 years old and need substantial infrastructure upgrades, and some of those owners are struggling. Are they eligible for this type of thing? Or, because it's not, it would be them individually, not Palo Alto Housing Corp, because they're now responsible for this unit that they bought.
So under our existing BMR program, we actually have funds allocated for emergency types of rehabilitation. So Tim Wong, our housing coordinator, he is responsible for that effort. So if you know of any, please go ahead and send them to me, and I'd be more than happy to coordinate that with Tim. It's a lot more difficult to, you can't just fund an individual through CDBG, you actually have to create a program. This would require us to create a rehabilitation program, or outsource that. A few years ago, Avenidas was doing a handy worker program, and you'll actually see that we didn't complete the project. We only ended up funding 16 individuals for that effort. So those are the two alternatives. You can either outsource it to an agency that will administer the program for you, or you do it in-house. But for the BMR program specifically, we have an emergency fund in there dedicated for those types of residents or tenants, actually homeowners, that need that rehab work.
Okay.
Public facilities and improvements is another one that's particularly difficult in Palo Alto, because the services that are provided at that public facility have to be directed to low to moderate income individuals. And when you have a mixture of incomes, you have to account for all of that. And 70% of the beneficiaries have to be low to moderate income. So in Palo Alto, it's very difficult, again, to get these types of projects approved, although in the past we have funded a few of them. A few years ago, we funded Avenidas for their HVAC project. So we were able to get that under because seniors have a special threshold and exception that doesn't require the LMI requirements. And then our last category in Palo Alto specifically is our economic development. This is technical assistance to businesses. This is how we were able to fund the pilot microenterprise assistance program. And through this, the job training specifically is how we're able to fund Downtown Streets team for their workforce development program. As I mentioned, currently we're finalizing or wrapping up the needs assessment. It's just a screenshot of the survey that was sent to you last month. A picture of the treehouse. It was actually funded during the last con plan cycle, but because it was completed during the current consolidated plan cycle, we actually get to get credit once the units are occupied. So this was one of the projects that we count towards our 5-year goals for the current cycle.
And pardon me, which one was that?
It's the treehouse on Charleston. So for that project, we used CDBG funds for the acquisition of the site. And then the balance of the funds came from the county, from the city's housing fund, and I forget where the last source of funding was. It's a TCAC project, so there's a variety of funding sources involved in that project. 35 units, LMI, for low moderate income individuals. So goals and objectives. This is the amount of money that we've received over the past 5 years. It's more than $3 million. And as you can see, our funding is going down. Even though our program continues to generate program income every year, our allocation from the federal government continues to decrease. So for 2015, our allocation is $433,000. We're still waiting to hear from HUD what our allocation will be for fiscal year 16, but it's anticipated that it will be going down again. There's no sense on the percentage though.
What is that downward trend all about? Is that just in general the federal government's cutting back, or is it because our neighborhood is perceived as so affluent that we don't qualify?
It's actually both. So it's a combination of a reduction in the overall CDBG appropriation, and now instead of HUD using the census information where your allocation changes every 10 years or so based on the census data, now the federal government is using the American Community Survey, which changes every 2 years. And so instead of seeing a dramatic drop in funding, we'll see a very small decline every 2 years or so. And that's for fiscal year 2013 is when we saw that huge reduction, and we had to re-strategize how we spent the funds, and that's when we shifted some of our fair housing services under admin in order to reduce the impact on the other social service providers. And we also just wanted to show you a breakdown of our different funding categories and where the money's gone. So as you can see, we've allocated we've actually spent $1.2 million on affordable housing type of projects, 1.18 in economic development, and as you know, we're restricted in what we can spend for public services at 15%, and we've met that goal and we've kept it. when cities allocate additional funding or funding over the 15%, then the federal government can come in and request that we pay the money back. So we try to make sure that we keep within those limits. These are the current goals for the 2010-2015 consolidated plan, and we want you to start thinking about what those goals are going to look like for the next 5-year cycle. We will be bringing you draft recommendations for the goals in February, but we wanted to just show you what we're doing in the current funding cycle, or in the current 5-year plan, which is to assist in the creation and preservation of affordable housing, promote fair housing choice, and promote environmental sustainability. And I'll show you what this looks like in terms of our objectives. This is what we said we would do in 2010. So as you can see, there's a variety in our performance to date, with some 5-year goals exceeding, well, we've exceeded the 5-year goal, and others not having, for instance, the preserve existing affordable rental housing. The way that the goal was written, it's unclear whether that means to rehab the existing structures, or if there is a affordable housing project that's going to be losing their affordability if CDBG funding would come in to once again renew those subsidies. Unfortunately, in the existing plan, it's not clear, and so we've decided to leave that and add everything under all of our housing activities under the conserve the condition of existing rental housing, which we interpreted as that's what the goal was intending to do.
So what are those numbers? Is that percentage or amount?
Those are amounts. So our 5-year goal was to increase the supply of rental housing by 50 units.
Okay.
To date, we have, within this planning period, we've constructed 90. And it's a little misleading, the goals, because the funding wasn't just exclusively CDBG. CDBG is used to leverage the development of affordable housing. So that includes the Treehouse project, for instance, where CDBG funds were used for the acquisition and not for the construction. And so that's another thing that we want to clarify in the next 5-year strategic plan, is that the funds are used as leverage and not for construction.
What does it mean, the food and meal program 2,000 and services to prevent homelessness 2,000? Whoa, what do those mean?
Again, this is another example of how unclear the goals were, or the objectives were structured last year. So what we've captured under services to prevent homelessness is the activity that takes place at the Opportunity Center and the single room occupancy program, residential program that we approved under the last 5 years. Food and meal program is also, it falls under the Opportunity Center's operations and the funding that we give to that. And in here, you'll see that the Downtown Streets team, their workforce development program isn't captured. The microenterprise assistance program isn't captured. So the objectives and the goals don't speak to each other. And so we want to make sure that it's properly captured. And that's why we wanted to bring this to you today, is when we start thinking about the goals and objectives in February, that we properly capture and that it's very clear what's meant by services to prevent homelessness.
I still don't quite understand. What's a service that we would count?
Under homelessness?
Under, yeah, that and others.
So for instance, under services, it's the services that are offered at the Opportunity Center.
So it's the 2,000 services?
Over a 5-year period.
2,000. Each single event is one service.
Right.
So even if it's one individual who's getting multiple services.
And that's why that particular line item, why the results are so high, because they weren't being properly tracked. And so HUD actually does require that it's one unduplicated individual. And so we've changed the reporting mechanisms, and so the number isn't as high as it was 2 years ago. Now, instead of them reporting over 1,000 services, now they only report the number of individuals that they actually assist, which is closer to 500 a year. And so again, those are the types of clarifications that we want included in the next 5-year strategic plan.
So the food and meal program counts meals?
It does. So that's actually the meal program.
Breaking bread.
Yes, the Breaking Bread program. So part of the part of the contract that we have with Envision through their Opportunity Center is the Breaking Bread program.
So-
They
so
report.
It's 2,000 meals, 2,000 individual plates,
So that's 2,000 individuals, individual people. And to date, we've served approximately 1,678 people.
And that's not an unduplicated count.
That is not an unduplicated count
So
because of
somebody
the
could have
way.
10 meals and the 10 would be in there.
Exactly. But we want to make it very clear what those objectives are, because then that translates into our applicants, and when the HRC starts reviewing applications for funding, you actually get to see what they're applying for and how those goals line up with the 5-year strategic plan goals and objectives.
So Consuelo, a constituency I get to represented here are disabled people. And I know some of our agencies would like to start job training for people with disabilities. Would that be something that could potentially qualify for CDBG funding?
So it does. We actually currently fund the Silicon Valley Independent Living Center, and that's another one of the instances where a high priority was placed on individuals with disabilities, but it wasn't included as a goal, and it wasn't included as an objective. And you don't see the results of the 2-year work that they've done in this objectives table because it wasn't captured. And those are the types of things that we want to make sure that we can show HUD. We use the funds for this in addition to what is actually in our plan. So those are eligible types of programs that we're currently funding.
Okay, so how would I help to connect, like an agency such as Abilities United that wants to start job training for some of their disabled clients? How would I bring that to the attention of like you and Matt so that you can start figuring out if that would be part of our goals or objectives rather?
Or rather, our objectives. Well, we're actually going to be issuing our notice of funding availability at the end of this month, and that would be a perfect opportunity for them to apply for the funds. And then that's how they would actually make it into the cycle. If you're thinking about us actually identifying that as a goal to specifically assist individuals or disabled individuals, then we'll bring that to you back in February. We're waiting for the results of the needs assessment and then the analysis of our current data in order to determine whether that's a high priority, medium priority, low priority, and we'll bring all of that to the HRC for a recommendation. And so one of the difficulty or one of the things that we're anticipating for this year is that you're going to be receiving recommendations for our fiscal year 16 budget, while you also look at the consolidated plan. So you'll be making two decisions in one. And that's why we thought it would be a really good idea to introduce this subject now so that it's not as confusing. This isn't something that we do on an annual basis, and it's going to be a lot of reading. And so we thought we'd introduce it now, and then if you have any questions, that we can make sure that those get addressed in February when we come back to the HRC. So we've kind of had our little discussion already. Is there anything else that you think we've missed or that you'd like to see in how we present the information? We are going to be asking for 2 volunteers to serve on our selection committee, which means we'll coordinate in January. Is there anything else that you think that we haven't captured, or in your experiences with us to date, if there's something that we can add, any clarifying points? I know that the goals and the objectives haven't been so clear, so that's on our top priority list.
I served last time, and something that I found difficult to understand were the federally mandated constraints on the funding. So, for example, there was the Magical Bridge project, but it didn't qualify. And actually, I can't actually remember why it didn't qualify, but there were all these, kind of blockades sometimes that were hard to understand. So I think going into this next cycle, it would be really helpful if the constraints and limitations were really clear at the outset so that we didn't waste time wandering off making other suggestions that turn out to be ineligible.
Thank you. I do remember why it was not.
Why? You remind me.
Okay, sure. Because Palo Alto is a high-income area, and the Magical Bridge project can't be exclusively, you can't designate it as an exclusive use. The only way that you can approve that is if we were in a low-moderate area where all users can use the facility. And so CDBG funding has two requirements. It has to meet a national objective, and it has to be an eligible activity. So it actually was an eligible activity, but it didn't meet a national objective of helping low, moderate income individuals.
Because there weren't enough of them in Palo Alto.
Right, there wasn't a concentration.
Is there a metric for concentration?
Yes, it's based on the census tracts. So in Palo Alto, we have no geographic designation areas for CDBG. One of the requirements is that you designate a priority area for CDBG. In Palo Alto, because we don't have any census eligible tracts, then we can't geographically identify areas in the city. We have to do it by beneficiary.
So I want to know, there are four major areas that you mentioned for the allocation of the funding. It's public service and housing, and then public facilities and improvement and economic development. Do we have anything to say what percentage of funding allocate in specific area? And how do we do that?
Yes, great question, Commissioner Chen. That's another reason why we wanted to bring this before you. When we start looking at the goals and the objectives, when we bring the plan before you, that's the time to have the discussion about any percentage that you want to dedicate to specific needs or a specific, it's difficult to assign it to an agency, but you can assign it to a need. So after you receive the report from the needs assessment, if homelessness, for instance, is a top priority or has a high priority, you can actually set a percentage for homelessness. Again, keeping in mind that we do have those two regulations that require us not to spend more than 15% of our budget on public service types of activities.
So they're going to take the countywide survey and just puzzle out the information for Palo Alto, and that's the information that will be going on.
That and our housing element currently has a needs assessment for housing, and so we'll be using existing. We've also looked at the park and recreation, the master plan. So we'll be looking at any current plan that the city's currently, or that's underway. And it's difficult in Palo Alto, again, for the income, but we'll see what we can pull from all of that. And then HUD also provides us with some data that we use.
Are there any other questions or comments for Consuelo?
I'm sure, like, obviously this, you can look stuff up in the budget, but is there any kind of report that synthesizes kind of where money went from last time around?
Yes, so every year we're required to prepare a consolidated annual performance and evaluation report. It's the CAPER. We bring that before the HRC in September. And so we brought it in September.
Oh, that's right.
And again, if you look at that document and you find that there's, perhaps we can pull some of the more critical data out of that and include that in our staff report, we're always open to making it a lot more easier for you to see. The reports are generated through our HUD provided templates, so there isn't a lot of wiggle room in how that's structured. But if you feel that there's a better way of presenting it, we're always happy to hear any ideas that the HRC has.
Anything else for Consuelo while we have her? So Consuelo, are you going to be with us in February, or will you have transitioned into your new role by then?
So Matt will be the one that comes before you after today. And I might be coming and helping him out if he needs to. And or I might just sit in the audience and listen to him.
Okay, well, we're going to miss you, but we welcome Matt, so thank you very much.
Thank you. If there are no other questions or if you think of anything, you can let me know.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to that 175-page report.
The Sparkman's version of that?
That's going to be a doozy.
I know.
That's an easy one. I know, the mayor has experience with even worse ones than that. Not worse in a bad sense. Okay, so, am I getting arrested? All right, so our next item on the agenda is a holdover from last month. We had a very, very brief intro discussion last month about a report that Commissioners Buchetti and Chen have been working on regarding affordable housing. And we tabled it because Commissioner Buchetti was not with us and we weren't sufficiently prepared, but you've all had a chance now to read the report. We should be ready for our discussion. And Commissioner Buchetti, would you like to introduce the topic and refresh us on where we are?
Sure. Commissioner Chen and I worked on this report as you could tell, as a response to our 2014 goal about exploring ways for the HRC to advocate for additional affordable housing in Palo Alto for low-income, very low-income, and extremely low-income residents. Each of those is a technical category that refers to the household income. We found a lot of kind of difficult to swallow statistics. Difficult not because they were inaccurate, but difficult because they point to such a serious situation in a city that proclaims or imagines itself to be diverse and inclusive. And these data that we collected don't show that. And it seems like a lot of Palo Altans know that because the National Citizen Survey, in which we participate as part of the run-up to the annual report that the city auditor prepares, puts Palo Alto at 278 out of 280 surveyed cities in this National Citizen Survey in regard to citizen rating of availability of forward quality housing as good or excellent. So 1% or first percentile is where we ended up, and that's bottom at the top. So there's an awareness of what the problems are. And then we develop a variety of statistics on income levels and low-income rental data. We took a look at inbound commuters on grounds that these are people who can't afford to live in Palo Alto, and so they must commute with all the negative attributes of commuting in terms of pollution and traffic and so on. We presented some data on who these people are in regard to the kind of work that they do. We looked at rental prices and what's affordable in terms of likely rental prices. There's a brief discussion of ABAG and the question of Palo Alto's share, or if you like, fair share of the population increase in Palo Alto and how the state chooses to allocate it through regional agencies, of which the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, is the one that we participate in. And so it assigns a certain number of requirement to identify sites for low and moderate income housing and other kinds of housing. And identifying sites doesn't produce actual dwellings. So that's another issue. But there's also an issue in terms of whether Palo Alto accepts this allocation of, in this case, 1,988 sites as its current allocation from ABAG. Finally, we concluded Palo Alto is at risk of becoming a community less and less able to live its values of diversity and inclusion. And to the extent that we rely on the marketplace to resolve this issue, we are relying on an organization that has no way to deal with the issue. because the marketplace is indifferent to values by definition. This isn't a criticism, this is a description that marketing behavior is about buying and selling. It's not about other kinds of things like creating low-income housing. So the dilemma that we ran into was what to do with these data. Because the city has a number of things underway, the biggest of which is the comprehensive plan, which has a housing element in it, and it's going to be the main piece of business for the Parking and Transportation Commission over the course of the next year.
Do you mean parking or planning?
Planning.
Actually, parking is maybe a better word.
Planning and Transportation Committee. I talked to the chair of that committee the other night, and I was introducing to somebody, and I got it all wrong. Parking and whatever.
That's what we're all obsessed about, so it's all good.
But that was an important commission, and it's an even more important commission now because of recent appointments to it. So that may change this issue a little bit, because that may be the place to make some recommendations, or to have a joint meeting, or to make a presentation to them about our concerns, and I think they may share some of those concerns. But to the extent we've documented some of the issues, that adds some quantitative horsepower to the general notion that Palo Alto is doing too little in this area and needs to do more, and that some of the formal activities like ABAG that only produce sites rather than actual dwellings, structures, that more people who are in the position, more organizations that are in a position to actually produce housing, like the Housing Corporation, or other kinds of collaboratives that have been undertaken in the past that have produced some of the low and moderate income housing that we have, some of the little that we have in Palo Alto. How can we generate, activate, energize more of that kind of activity? How can the HRC help on grounds that our role is to add some of the sort of moral character of what kind of a community do we want to be and how do we get there? And right now there's more people who will talk about what kind of community we want to be than there are who are in a position to say, well, let's act on that and let's actually produce some housing. So there's a mismatch or a gap there. And how can the HRC help to close that gap? That was sort of the way we ended up. We don't want to just drop a report in the middle of all kinds of activity that is aimed in different directions, but where can we focus and how can we focus some of this work so that it adds to it, reinforces it, helps.
Senor, can we help you? Do you need some help? Maybe we should not provide them some of them. Thank you.
So that's my piece. What would you like to
So
add?
Commissioner Chen, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think Ray really did a very good job, and I'm just helping to get some numbers in. One of the things that bothers me so much is the assessment of the inflow and outflow job situation. In Palo Alto, there's close to 90,000 jobs, but only 8.4% of it, they're occupied, they're taken by the residents in Palo Alto. Like more than 90% of jobs are taken by people from outside, inflow jobs too. Last time I can show you the diagram. And then it didn't include Stanford. I checked it out this afternoon, so it's a serious issue because as the Commissioner Bichetti has mentioned that all the market is driven by this commercial thing. It wasn't driven by human, needs. So what can we do about that? And one thought I have is that, in addition to what we can do as a city or citizen and change the policies, all kind of changes in the rules. I think one of the things is that we should be let the business community, those who have offices or companies in Palo Alto, make them aware what is going on and seek their opinion, see what can they do to improve the community rather than just improve their own business.
Did you get any numbers on the percentage of the managers or the CEOs of the companies within Palo Alto? Who are, what number of them are residents?
No, I don't have
Because
that.
I don't know if they would care
I don't
about
think
their
it's probably a
employees.
private issue. I don't think you can. I don't have it. I don't have it. I mean, I have looked at a lot of websites on census, and I didn't have that. But I have one thing is about the number of companies that is in Palo Alto. Total number of firms in 207. Right now it's more. In Palo Alto, it's like 10,175. Total number of firms in Palo Alto. So it's about 10,000 CEOs, right? And then whether they live in Palo Alto, I don't know.
Okay, so we had a chance to review the report and listen to some of the contact provided by Commissioners Buchetti and Chen. So I think what we need to do is put some options on the table for how to proceed next. So one idea is to partner with the Planning and Transportation Commission. What kind of collaboration would that entail? What are some ideas for us to approach them? We've never really worked directly with them before. So this is kind of a new liaison type of role for us to play.
Ray, do you have any connections with, any relationships with anyone on that commission?
Well, yeah, I know people, but I think, I'm not sure that's, whether we know them or not. The question is, do we want to interact with them, and if so, how? I mean, the chair of that committee, just like the chair of this committee, is accessible to anybody who wants to have a conversation with them or to generate some action.
And they have, I think, some new appointees on that commission too. But do we want to just come in with our report and advise them? Do we want to actually work with them to identify housing opportunities and funding opportunities and on sort of an ongoing basis?
How do we advise them? It will be very difficult for us to advise them here.
Well, I will say that I've had kind of one round of communication with the PTC in the past, and that was around transportation. And Commissioner Chen and I did that, it was I think 2 summers ago. And they were very open and receptive to what we brought to them, but at the same time, they were not really able to act on the information we provided. We're making them aware of things usually isn't enough. You have to make them aware, and then you have to propose solutions, and then you have to work with them on a solution if you actually want to make something concrete and real in this community. So I don't know if just meeting with them and handing over the report that Commissioners Buchetti and Chen have developed would be sufficient to really have an impact on them and the direction of housing in the community. We'll probably take a deeper commitment on our part to meet with them, establish a relationship, use the report as a basis for proposing some sort of, 1, ongoing collaboration, and 2, some sort of specific solutions. Whether that's we collaborate with them and staff to identify housing opportunities, whether we work with them, staff, and the federal government to bring more funds in. You know, it could be very, very complicated. Yes, Ms. Shepherd?
Well, I'm just going to suggest that maybe I should explain how Planning and Transportation works. They advise council. Their mission is the comprehensive plan. Typically, they're responsive to the projects that come into the city, and the planning director, brings them as the first initial contact with the community, as opposed to staff and the applicant. It's not necessarily, this looks a little bit like you're trying to create a strategy to achieve the development of more housing, low and affordable income housing? What is it that, this would be more of a, I think council might have to ask for that to happen, for it, does that sound right?
Well, I was going to whisper to you, do we need to get a referral from the council for the two commissions to work together on this project?
And if so, what is the goal of the project? Is the goal to actually manifest the housing or design a new mechanism possibly for how we operate with our in-lieu funds so that they're accessible? You know, because we've got $14 million now, $14.5 million with the Sterling Park, $8 million that are coming in. Yeah, so we've got a lot. But it takes a lot in Palo Alto. And I know that we have 6 beds over in East Palo Alto right now that the
Yes.
county's paying for. For Santa Clara County, they're paying for San Mateo County beds in East Palo Alto.
Yeah.
So I think one of the really big questions has always been is whether or not there is a way to not look at the borders, you know, as specifically as we do. Because we all, they're actually paying for a shuttle right now, East Palo Alto, to go from our University Avenue station out there. We are in charge of the shuttle, they pay the full thing. So there's also that. So I just wanted to find out if this is a project you want to work on. You might want to see if this is something that, I think you need to have some level of intersection with council to actually kind of say, yes, we want you to work on this. Otherwise, it might just go nowhere. You know, like you might work on something and then council's not receptive to it.
Yes, no, I totally understand, and thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Shepherd. I will say that my experience, limited as it is that a lot of times housing is discussed in very aspirational terms in Palo Alto, and things are identified as potential sites, and then nothing really happens. So if we were going to invest the time and energy into this type of project, I personally would like it to be not just aspirational, but with the intent of helping the city find some places where we can actually create housing, or some way to create housing.
So manifest the housing, have the housing be built. That's very different than, gee, we just have to zone, but remember community, we don't build it. So that's the question, it sounds like to me. So I think that you just need to make sure that this is something that...
Well, I want to find out too from my commissioners before we would ever take the step up going to council, whether people feel the same way or interested in pursuing this. Also, as Mayor Shepherd was explaining, the PTC in response to development proposals. So this would be asking them to partner with us on kind of a more proactive topic, not waiting for someone to come to them, but us, you know, as two commissions working together, working, you know, proactively toward identifying potential sites, working on, you know, making arrangements with the city and the communities. And, you know, this is a very, very tough topic right now in Palo Alto. So we would have to be in for the long haul. I mean, this is something that would happen overnight. It could be years.
Right, and I think I remember from previous conversations, the HRC felt like one of their roles was to lay the groundwork or have some of those conversations community-wide, so a situation such as Mayville doesn't happen. Again, to start a more deeper community dialogue about housing, low-income housing, infill low-income housing, and so forth.
Another thing I personally am interested in, and then I'll be quiet because I really want to hear what my fellow commissioners have to say, is I wonder if it'd be worth our time to do some research into other communities who obviously struggle with many of the same issues. Palo Alto is not unique in that sense. And I wonder if there are some alternative financing arrangements, zoning arrangements that other communities are using successfully that we might possibly borrow and tweak to fit the Palo Alto paradigm. I don't know if that's possible, but I sometimes think it can be refreshing to look outside of our community just to see what else is going on in the world and maybe think outside of the box and bring some of those ideas back to the city and see if any of that has legs here. I mean, but again, that would be an investment of time and energy, you know, a willingness to really dig in and do that research and maybe even do some traveling to go take a look and see what's going on.
Jill, the planning director does do some of that, so it could just be a request during the comprehensive plan review to ask for those benefits. She has provided that information as part of our comprehensive plan packet update. So it's very interesting to see what the other cities are doing.
Yeah.
Very interesting to see what a judge throws out after they put something in. So it is interesting, and to try to be bold, I think that that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Just, she might be able to do it very quickly, and not quickly, but if asked.
Right, and that would be wonderful. We could have, a lot of the starting point already there, and then we may want to explore take something a little further and explore out and think about modifying it to fit our community. Again, it's a lot of time. It's a real bandwidth issue for us and for the other commission. We're all volunteers with, limited funding and authority, so we would have to really think seriously about doing that. So I'm going to be quiet now, and we really want to hear from all of you. What do you think?
Part of the context in which, I'm sorry,
No,
I've talked enough.
No, we really do want to hear from you. Go.
I was just going to, I would echo that. I think the more we can narrow the scope of what our goal is, the easier it is for us to take action and get an outcome. I think, to piggyback on what Minka said, if our goal is to make people aware, I'm biased, but I also work on the comp plan civic engagement group. It might be a forum where we can also submit, because they're going to do civic engagement all next year in the update of the comp plan. It might be worth it for us to submit either a report or somebody speaking at one of the events and make people aware of some of the data that's in the report. That's one, check with staff, that's appropriate, but that's one option I think would help kind of get your input to the comp plan. Because I agree with the report that there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen on this issue right now. It might do us a service to kind of figure out what specifically we want to do and how do we fit into the bigger puzzle.
I would second that, because I think just asking in the comp plan period is really the best way.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Well, the comp plan is exactly for that. It's for anybody can make a comment, and then staff actually has to chase it down. But if the commission actually makes the question about what are the innovations to housing and communities, then I think they can touch it. What do you think?
That was more or less the comment I was going to make about what happens with this report or with something like it. And that is that this is a distinctive period with the comprehensive plan being in place, and once it's in place, it's supposed to guide the city for some time to come. So part of the question is, how do we get some of these facts and aspirations into it in such a way that says, let's not just identify sites, let's actually create places where people can live and make that part of the comprehensive plan, so that it has that civic action character to it, and not simply, well, we know we've got a lot of income housing problems, but we don't exactly know what to do about it, or we don't have it as a goal, or it's not very high on our priority list. So how do we make it a more significant part of the comprehensive plan than it may likely be without input from us?
I agree. Another issue, where did your comment?
Well, just again, going off of what everyone's saying, I don't see the political will in Palo Alto right now to get anything concrete done. And I think sort of a way to be able to sneak this issue in. I hate to be cynical, but I think that's the only way it will happen, is if we can get it in through the comprehensive plan and sort of force the city's cards to deal with it there. So I do think that's probably the best approach.
Okay, now I'm going to suspend our discussion for a few minutes because we need to change the tape. So nobody say anything important. I agree that politically it's a very charged issue, but it's also a very long-term issue. So it might behoove us to think about our role now and start carving out a role for our commission now, because it could be years before we actually realize whatever goals that we set. I mean, And in 5 years from now, the city may be in a different place. And, you know, you just never know. But if we don't start soon, I think we will miss the chance, as Commissioner McKetty mentioned, to catch this cycle of the comp plan. And that's why I'd like us to think seriously about what kind of role we might develop. It would be a change for the HRC, but I think it's something where we could really infuse some of our experience and the knowledge that we gained during our learning series into the discussion.
Yeah, the next step is how are we going to do that? Well, how do we interact with the comprehensive plan? Be able to, get in, evaluate, or get an answer.
Well, how is the comp plan updates being done in terms of the community engagement that you mentioned, Commissioner Almsani?
So, several months ago, we've had a number of Palo events already that got things started. Now the Comp Plan Civic group meets monthly, and those are open to the public to discuss the process for the next year. In parallel to this, the city's required to do something called the Environmental Impact Report, EIR. I think the city planners still kind of figuring out how we're going to sort of get public input and mesh together with the planning. But so far, on November 3rd, there was a discussion.
The environmental impact report is something that we have to do after we decide the influences that we want to have on our current comprehensive plan. Then the environmental impact report goes through about 8 or more categories, including historic, Native American, traffic, 8 different categories that get measured with the impact change cumulatively. And they'll take some significant intersections to do the traffic study, so the baseline information's all out. So after we prepare the draft report, they will go through the process of the impact. Before you get into that, right now where we are stuck with the comprehensive plan is getting the influences into the scenarios, whether it's going to be a limited growth or a fast growth or a slow growth or a do nothing, just leave the plan exactly the way it is, which is required by law. So I think we're bringing it back on December 8th. Councilmember Holman's not going to be here on Monday. She's on vacation, so she asked us to change it. We had initially scheduled it for the 17th, so I think we're doing it on the 1st or the 8th or something, have it on my tentative agenda. That's when hopefully we might be able to get the scenarios in, and then staff will go and lightning speed to try to put it into the book. And when the book comes out, that's when you should look at it, because that's when you should see whether or not you have the interest that you have in it when it talks about housing, outside of the housing element.
And the idea also is that...
Then it goes through the impact report, and then everybody gets horrified with what the impacts are. Like, oh gosh, if we're going to do this, Page Mill Road has to be 8 lanes or something like that, or many other things like that. And then we go, okay, well, we can't grow like that. We can't do that. It's just not going to happen. So let's go back and see and match up. But there will be those 2 periods. One needs to be the question going in, and then is it answered in the impact report. So there's a few spots.
And the idea is that the scenarios aren't mutually exclusive. That if you like, a piece of scenario 3, but you mostly do scenario 2, you'll be able to kind of piecemeal and give your input on it.
I think we're going to be doing it in a grid now instead of different scenarios. So do you want this scenario with a slow growth? Do you want this scenario with a 0 impact on the environment? Have as many people as you want, go as high as you want, but no net new trips at all. So things like that. So
It's a dynamic, interactive process.
I'm told that the worst part is getting into it, and we are not into it yet. We are into it at the exploratory level and the ideas level. Into it means that you've actually got your scenarios embedded in your book, and and then you launch it into the measurements of how does it change the environment. And the environment includes people, it's not just other things.
To whom is the EIR submitted?
We do the EIR ourselves. This is our EIR. This is a program for the entire city, not just for the grocery store down the street that happens to have 100 more, trips going on or something. So it is that general of a plan. And then a specific plan is what Mountain View is doing. They've gone into 5 different, I think, specific plans in Mountain View where they go in and do each of them is a specific design, and then it's a specific environmental impact report for that design. So we're doing one for the entire city with this general plan. It's a general plan. We call it a comprehensive plan.
And what's the target date for the completion of the environmental impact report?
It depends as to when we start. Usually whenever you start, typically, we were hoping to be able to certify, because then we have to certify it. Once it's certified, the state will recognize it, and then anybody that wants to come and develop, they have to abide by the plan. They have to give us something if they want to do something different. Anyway, it depends as to how long we take. We were hoping to be able to get the scenarios in August 6th, and they got punted, and we haven't gotten them in. So as soon as we get them in, it'll take about 1.5 years, but that's again, if we don't go horrors, we don't like this, and stop again and go out for more. So, and there is talk by some that they don't think we need to do any of this at all, that we'll just leave the plan that we have. But the plan is out of date. It went to 2010. It's 2014. It's 4 years out of date. The state doesn't look at it at this point. That means developers can do whatever they can come in and design. So there's different debates that are going on right now about that, but the plan was that we did in retreat this year is to try to get it into the scenarios, which would then mean January, February, we would end up with the book. Right now we do have a draft book from what the Plan and Transportation Department's been doing, but the Our Palo Alto initiative was to try to see if there was anything that wasn't captured. The biggest thing that wasn't captured was the fact that people are having density and growth debates right now, and they want to see the brakes put on all of the construction and all of the growth that's going on. So now we have some ability to go in and do that. So right now is when you should be asking for different types of scenarios for housing, your innovations to housing, to see if there is anything out there.
Some people want the brakes put on, but not everybody.
Well, there's also, you can discuss this with the new council in January, because there's different thinking on that. But Pleasanton actually, it was part of attachment J from the August report, if you want to look at some innovations. And the planning director's already done that. You might want to take a look at that and just see if that's kind of what you're looking for. Pleasanton voted to stop housing and to just stop it. They wanted to stop all growth and stop housing. And a judge overruled it because of their ABAG mandates, the state mandates that ABAG distributes. So I thought it was an interesting, package that she had, what other communities are doing that are very innovative and trying to manage things.
So Tim Long is the one from whom we can get this?
It's in the council packet from August 4th, was it released, or August 6th?
I can fund it.
It's attachment J.
Okay.
That's the packet, that was just, I don't know if you saw it, it was just interesting to see what people have done. So, other communities have done, and it hasn't been thrown out yet, or has, so.
Do any other commissioners have some ideas for how we might want to define a role and proceed on this issue?
I'd like to know, is now the time that we put in our ideas to the comprehensive plan? Or how do we do that as a commission? Are we going to have a consensus in what to say, what to put in?
It came a while
Well,
ago.
we don't define that part of the housing element.
Does it, could we suggest anything in it right now? To the comprehensive?
So there are, the current meetings are open to the public. I think what the mayor said was it might be best to wait until after they have the second meeting, because then you'll have a little more, you'll be able to know what to comment on and kind of have a little more data as well.
So it's after.
I was just talking to Minka that, not Tim Long, because he's housing element focused, which means he's in that careful matrix of housing. What you're asking for is the part of our staff in the planning department, Hillary's department, that actually is looking, goes to conventions and gets updated, and, they constantly are getting updated with new planning things that are going on around the state. And you want that person to sit here and listen to you and then see if they can help you figure out, how to get that answered, and if there's an answer, and if not, if it's a desire, then,
Right, and I've always found it's easiest when we invite staff from other departments that we prep them and saying these are the 4 questions that we'd like you to answer, or the 4 key areas we'd like you to cover. So, and that would help planning department identify the correct staff member.
yeah.
All right, so then should our next step be to work with Minka on developing questions that we want answered?
Or your subcommittee to go to planning and share.
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to do that.
Do we want to have that staff person come here to speak to the whole HRC? Do we want to form a subcommittee who will work on this issue?
Whole HRC.
It's 2 commissioners.
Right, I was just going to say, if Ray and Teresa want to go and just talk to Hillary and just say, this is where we are, do you see a there, or what's your ideas? That would probably be the most effective way, and then once you figure out what she says, you can either bring it back, or you can say, could you come to a meeting sometime?
So Ray, would you be up for doing that? Or would you?
I don't know. Depends how many pills I have to take.
All right, well, why don't we...
Are you volunteering?
No, actually,
Yeah.
sorry, you can continue that.
Well, I was going to say, why don't we see if Ray and Teresa are up to meeting with Hillary or her staff? If not, then why don't I work with Minka to either meet with them or have them come to talk to the HRC? So we'll figure out one way or the other. We'll make that connection. All right, then, May, what did you say?
So I did try to kind of clarify. I think this is a useful thing to do, and I think getting Hillary's input will be super valuable. But actually, the broad point I was trying to say is we leverage the current comp plan civic engagement process to help engage with the public and share kind of some of this information. So, as my point is, I think usually things fail if you kind of only rely on sort of staff and so kind of the without any civic engagement. The only way things actually get built is if people want them to get built. And the only way that happens is if you can convince people of your ideas. So I do think we should attach public engagement element to it.
So you're saying a town hall meeting, something like that.
Do an our Palo Alto meeting.
Correct. And so I thought maybe we combine it with the comp plan process that's already happening. But maybe if it's a better idea to do it separately, that's fine too. But I just wanted to make sure that was the point I was trying to make.
And that's exactly how it should go. That's why when it comes straight out of commission without having gone out to the public, it's a will of the people.
Is this something where you invite Hillary to come and talk and ask how to do that? My experience with her has been at the Palo Alto meetings. And so is this something where Teresa and Ray, I think Commissioner Piketty and Chen would first go and talk to her and then see about having her come here and talking to her just in terms of how to include this in the Palo Alto meetings or some version of that? Because I believe I understand what you're saying, and I strongly agree with it, which is if you don't have some version of informed communication and consent in the culture, you're not going to get that kind of
I
thing.
thought we had to Palo Alto meeting regarding housing, remember when we started?
Right, but I think we're a little ahead of ourselves So I think what we need to do first is figure out what role the HRC wants to play in this very difficult discussion that the community is having, so that we can have a positive impact on the update to the comp plan. Now, of course, if we actually get to the point where we're trying to facilitate some sort of housing development, then we need to, of course, make sure that we take all of the community engagement that Commissioner Al-Hassani has been mentioning. That's critical to do, but that's a little bit farther down the road. I think we're still in a research and exploration phase where we're just trying to understand which cooks are stirring which pots, because we don't want to get in the middle of all that and just make it worse. We want to find out if we can carve out a role for ourselves that's really helpful and constructive.
And do I understand you that one of the first ways to do that would be to meet with somebody in Hillary's staff about what do they know about other communities, and bring that back to us to talk about what are some of the options out there?
Well, Mayor Shepherd was saying that she thought talking with someone in Hillary's organization, we can come up with some specific things that we want to know, might be helpful, because some of our ideas may be reinventing the wheel. So I think if we explore some of our thoughts with Hillary's organization, we may understand what's been done, what needs to be done, and what kind of role we can play, like where we can fit in a hopefully helpful and facilitation-oriented way, not in a yet another cook storming into the kitchen, stirring another pot kind of way, because I don't think we want to just do that. We don't want to have the complexity.
And I think it might be best to speak directly to Hillary instead of getting a member of her staff. If she has the comp plan dissected amongst different staff members, I think it might just, as a commission going directly to the department director, I think that would be that would be fine. Or if we know specifically what we want to talk to her about, and she wants to give us to one of the, advanced planning manager or something like that. But I would like to start with that.
I just asked you. It sounds as though you've been considering these elements, and that your next step is, do we want to figure out how to advocate that housing actually gets built instead of just zoning for it? Is that what you're trying to get to?
And that's one aspect.
And incentives in the comp plan, because right now I know we're looking at incentives to slow growth, to meter things out, or come up with some ways, or even reduce buildable square footage, things like that. This, of course, would be a different thing, which would be, we want to see something in the comprehensive plan that is
well, I think
advocates for growth, that gives some preference for actually getting things built, as opposed to just, well, here it is, go fetch it, and if you look for it, and gee, if it's affordable, cool. But actually,
if it comes to us.
If it comes to us, that's what, if it showers down on us from somebody coming and saying, because the problem with affordable housing in Palo Alto, besides just whether there's a community will, is that land is so expensive, and that stops it right there. And so it's hard. And so the question then is, well, what tools do we have in our toolkit to say, we're going to do something? We want to see incentives, and I don't think anybody's talking about that in the comprehensive plan conversation right now. Many might think differently, but you might want to throw that in there and see if it sticks, because if you can get it in there into the scenarios, then the whole community that starts to become engaged sees it, and then you can get a community conversation going on it. And maybe it'll stay, and maybe it won't stay, but at least you'll hear from the community. And so that's I think what we're going to be looking at when we put the scenarios in, is this is how we can meet the growth. So that's why it might be a little bit late, because the scenarios are coming in now. I mean, we already sort of have them scripted. So.
All right, thank you, Mayor Shepherd. All right, so we will figure out either Plan A or Plan B, and all roads lead to Hillary at this time. And then once we, I think, have some more information, we can figure out next steps. And which I think at some point we will need to form a subcommittee. So if people are interested in this topic, step up when the time comes, because we'll probably need you to do that. All right. Does anybody have any other comments or questions on this? Let's kind of, I think we'll open it up for whole new world of Pandora's box, I'm not sure which. We'll see what happens. I do think we have a lot of information that's valuable to share though, so.
And the conversation is not that that advocating for more housing is contradictory, contradicts another goal. That they can be held in the same space.
Yeah.
The conversation.
All right, thank you guys so much. It's been very helpful, and thank you, Mayor Shepherd, for chiming in. Let's move on to our next item, which is the review of our work plan items. As you know, at our retreat, we all signed up for different tasks, and we're going to check in at every meeting and see what folks are up to, what milestones they've reached, if they need help with anything. We want to make sure at the end of the year that the projects and priorities we identified actually are fulfilled. So would anyone volunteer to give us an update on what they are doing? Silence is deafening. I'm getting a little concerned.
I'm supposed to be outreach to the immigrant community. I haven't heard anything from the report. I'm trying to finish that report yet. So
I have a very draft version from them, but I was sidetracked, as was the staff member in the city manager's office. So it didn't look much further than when it was presented to us at the retreat. So we needed to have a conversation, I think, with them before it came back here, because some of the same questions about language such as tradition and etiquette were still in there. So either of those kind of conversations can, I'll just have to speak with my colleague in the city manager's office if he's fine with having those kind of conversations and back and forth with them on the commission level, or we want to do that in a pre-meeting with them. So that's.
What is just that I could help in this aspect?
I think at this point I just need to get direction from my colleague on because he was the one who brought it to me in the first place. So that's a to-do item for me. But I appreciate that, and it might be that we have you join us at that meeting with
I'll be glad to do that.
There.
Yes.
This is on.
Thank you. So I'll jump in as well. So I've been working, starting to plan the senior summit, which we will have, I think, in January. We're going to plan the date later on this month. The senior summit, just to refresh you, will be a meeting. We're going to invite all the local service providers who work with the senior population, whether or not they're part of the ISRAP. And Avenidas is already on board, which I'm really excited about. The goal there would be to talk about what are some of the most important needs facing seniors, talk about what the HRC's learned in our needs assessment, and talk about whether there are some collaborative solutions that the agencies might be able to come up with on their own. And finally, to identify possibly some items that we might go back to the county and ask Josephine to carry for us. I think it'll be really great to have everyone in a room together for some time to kind of explore those issues. I think the service providers do have relationships with each other, but it's a little bit ad hoc. And I think having a comprehensive summit like this could be really helpful for them. And I hope some good ideas fall out of that, and that we're able to identify and quantify some solutions to the problems that our seniors face. I'll be working on that, and then that will tie in with my other work plan item, which is going back to Joe Smithian with some ideas for county funding that hopefully the city will also complement or pitch in on. Again, this is all contingent on being able to identify and quantify some items that are worthy of that type of funding. So I will be updating you on that. Our next meeting should have a date, and the invites should be out, and that'll be moving forward quickly. And if there are commissioners who want to participate in the senior summit, then I would love to have the help. It'll basically be a big meeting, but it'll be helpful to do some outreach to the agencies and make sure that they know that we value their participation, helping to put the agenda together for that meeting, and helping to get everybody prepared so we can have a really constructive conversation when we get there.
So there's a lot of excitement from the new director president and CEO of Avenida, so.
Yeah, I managed to grab her at another meeting and chew her ear off over lunch, so, but she was very, very supportive, and I think having Albany is there, that's just a touchstone for the whole conversation, and I really am hopeful that we'll have a good productive talk. Is there anyone else who'd like to give an update? Mindy, do you have an update on homeless vets?
Sure. Greer and I met recently and talked through some of these things, but as a reminder, we're trying to see if there's a way to guarantee permanent housing for homeless veterans in Palo Alto. One thing we did is met with Community Technology Alliance, which is a HISRAP funded organization, grantee. They are the kind of HMIS, which is Community Management Information System, the database for over 100 organizations in the area, and a big chunk of the organizations are in Santa Clara County. So those organizations, they do a variety of services, including helping the homeless. When someone checks in and consents to have information taken, it all goes into the same database. So they were super useful. I met with a woman named Michelle Ogburn, and she was incredibly helpful. Mika, I should email you first to see like what's kind of protocol, but she gave me a great dashboard. I'm going to pass it around or submit it to you, or I can email this out, but that shows you that last year, homeless vets who listed Palo Alto as their home, and gives you a lot of useful information, male, female, how many of them have mental health problems, how many of them have substance abuse problems, and gives us a much better idea of the homeless vet population. So she kind of laid out for me, generally, it's a 6-step process. When a veteran arrives at one of these partner organizations, like Envision, for example, they have to consent to have that information submitted. They take a survey, which is how they get a lot of this information. The person at the organization inputs that into the database. Then usually there's somebody who they call a coordinated care project. So if there's any particular initiatives, anybody's eligible for something, they get highlighted in the system, and somebody kind of is a traffic cop for pointing them in the right direction. And then they get assigned a case manager, and they have to find housing. So that's kind of like the 6-step process that Michelle laid out for me. So she was super useful and gave a lot of information. And we said we'll be in touch again, kind of after we do a little more diligence. The next thing we did was, and Commissioner Piketty helped with this as well, is we're trying to get a list of available housing in the area. One thing that is super tricky is that there are places that are only minutes away from here, but only service San Mateo County. Or they have all these sources. This is a regional problem, but like a lot of the solutions people are on city basis or different county basis, and just makes things. But we got Mila from Envision, also a HISRAP grantee, submitted a really good list of available shelters in Santa Clara County, as well as around Santa Clara County, emergency units, transitional units, and permanent units. So now I'm trying to see like what's kind of inventory in the area as well. The next step Greer and I are doing are basically creating a list of people we want to get in touch with to kind of figure out. So experts who kind of know, we've pulled up some policy papers that are useful about housing first programs and kind of what's worked and hasn't worked. Places in Utah that has been successful in this, LA, San Francisco. And we're also trying to come up with a list of organizations that work on this issue around the area and see kind of what they're doing, and see how we can partner with them to figure out a model that works in Palo Alto. In parallel to this, our next step is also to reach out to the VA, which does not use the same system as CTA has. So it's a whole separate parallel system that we need to figure out. So that's kind of where we're at.
Wow, you guys have done quite a bit. I wanted to ask, because this was started as a federal initiative, is there any federal funding available to help vets transition to housing?
So there is through HUD, but not, so they've done a first wave, so it's called the 25 Cities Initiative. They've done a first wave, and San Francisco is one of the cities. Palo Alto is not But somebody who works on this issue told me that San Jose, I think, is being considered as part of the next wave of cities. So they might get federal funding, but I don't know how that would translate to us.
There is, I mean, through the VA, I mean, there is very specific and targeted housing vouchers and that for homeless vets. Obviously, the level of support is not equal to the level of need. There's HUD bash vouchers and so forth. And every couple of years, the VA comes out with this grand grand plan to end homelessness among veterans by, I think the last one, Ray, was it like 2015 or 2020, and it's something. So I think having the latest from the VA of what they're working on, it's, the VA is this big group that I've never been able to penetrate. I don't even have a good contact. I would maybe suggest talking to Jennifer Loving, the head of Housing 1000. And I can give you her contact information. And she might have a better contact at the VA. Because like I said, it's really nebulous to find sometime and to go there. And also I'll give you a contact have you been in touch with some from Home First? Used to be each Life Builders. They have some very targeted funding that I was at a meeting the other day. They said that they're really looking to spend for homeless vets. So I'll give you those two contacts.
And the mayor actually also gave me somebody.
There's been another person who lives over there, but I think actually, maybe I could work with you on doing an introduction to the new executive director over there, because we did get an announcement earlier this year. Let me try to figure that out before the year end. And then I just had a question. Do the vets have cell phones?
I would think.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, some do, some don't.
I was just wondering, because when I was at National League of Cities a couple of years ago, I did go to one of their workshops, and the strategy in New York City, not for vets, but for homeless, or the unhoused, was to get them connected with a cell phone, and then to get them organized so that so that they could make contact. And then they could also be reached if they didn't see them bedded down in one of their places every evening. Anyway, it was very interesting. They were able to allow them to be elusive so that they would catch whatever shelter they wanted for the evening. So it wasn't like it was a routine and they weren't identified and stuff, but they were also kind of kept track of. They were able to get text messaging on medications and things like that. So I was just wondering if there
That is actually, now that I think about it, I went to San Francisco to interview homeless vets, and now most of them gave numbers elsewhere, not their they didn't have cell phone numbers to give. They gave, said you could reach me or you can call this person, and they'll know how to get in touch with me. So
it was just very interesting because that is the that's the technique going on in developing all kinds of places. Just get those cheap phones out and be able to make contact.
Well, I know that CTA, the group that runs the HIMSS, HMIS software, has worked on initiatives to provide both voicemail and cheap cell phones for vets. That's part of their initiative for sure. But it's a challenging population to work with, and they, obviously are chronically short of funds as well. But yeah, I think cell phone technology could be really helpful. On the other hand, there are some folks who struggle with mental illness to an extent that they're afraid of cell phones because they think the government's tracking them, and they're already so paranoid that there are some people that won't work for, but it could work for many people, I think.
I should have, you guys probably mentioned, like one of the really important pieces to this also that Michelle talked to me about, and also I interviewed the vets, this was also raised, that it's not just about matching people with the housing, it's the important thing also is that when somebody takes a survey, they're given a vulnerability score, and you have to match people to the right kind of housing. So some people may need round-the-clock care, and there's limited housing availability there, and some people just need a place to sleep, and so that piece is also tricky to. So when you fill out the survey, everybody's given a score so they can get matched in an appropriate place.
Yeah, I think the level of supportive housing is really important, and I think one reason so many homeless people fail out of housing is that they don't get enough support and to permanently make the transition. Because these are not always people who can sort of just self-manage, pay rent and follow the rules and hold a job because they've had a very traumatic and fragmented lifestyle. So they really need that permanent ongoing support. And that's just not, that piece of the puzzle is often missing. So anyway, I'm very impressed. You guys are doing some good work here. If you need help from HRC, staff, anyone, let us know, and we'll try to keep it going on this project. I look forward to your update. Let me see, so we've already talked about several of our projects. So Commissioner Warren, do you and Commissioner Savage have any update on the raising the profile of the HRC project?
Not at this time.
And then, another project was, which one more we're going to cover? We talked about that. Okay, the civility roundtables. Okay, which actually segues into my next agenda item, which I actually asked staff to put on specifically. So last week, Mountain View had a civility roundtable on affordable housing, and I had asked my fellow commissioners to attend if they could. So I was there, Commissioner Al-Hassani was there, Commissioner Chen was there, and Commissioner Savage was there. And unfortunately, she couldn't be with us tonight. It was really an interesting event, and this is something that we are considering doing here in Palo Alto.
Claudia Keith, our communications director, was going over there too. She likes how this is going. It's sort of like a different version of our Palo Alto, but it is how our Palo Alto is supposed to expand into topics.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed some parallels with it.
Yeah.
It was a well-attended event, and I really enjoyed it. And I definitely see some elements I would love to borrow in bringing that type of event to Palo Alto under HRC sponsorship. I see some things I might want to do differently, but I just wanted to see if people who were there wanted to share some of their impressions with our fellow commissioners, and then maybe talk about kicking off our first roundtable, which I'd like to do early next year, and that would be the film that we showed last time about living in Palo Alto, and having a discussion on basically the disparity between the haves and the have-nots here in our community, and having that from a youth perspective. So, I don't know, Commissioner Al-Hassani, did you have some thoughts to share on the roundtable?
Sure. I thought it was really well done for a variety of reasons. I just might want to say about that might be the roundtable type might be a good.
Well, first, why don't you, for people who weren't there, why don't you describe what it was like?
Sure. So it was.
It was literally a roundtable.
Yeah, literally around. So actually, I would say the most pressing critique I had of it is that they had the speakers sit in a circle facing each other, which was good for maybe for the speakers to have discussion, but it was a little awkward for the audience because your back is you're just kind of watching them talk in a circle. Which I think they were trying to be creative, but I think it wasn't as engaging for the audience.
So when you say it was well attended, how large was it? I imagined in my mind that it would be, when they talk about civility roundtable, they're talking about our Palo Alto, a discussion amongst everybody.
And there was at least 100 people there.
Yeah, over 100 people. They wanted to, I think what happens when you get a group that large is that people they show up and they start kind of going off on their own individual tangents, and you end up with a free-for-all, like we often have at city council meetings. So they don't want, I know really, so they don't want that. They have a more controlled discussion where the speakers were in their center roundtable, and they talked for maybe 30 minutes, and they had a moderator who was asking specific things and calling on people to make sure everyone had a chance to speak. And then we broke up into smaller groups, which were facilitated by Project Sentinel. And we had specific questions that we were asked to discuss. And then at the end of that process, each group gave a report. So the idea wasn't so much to come to a resolution on anything. The idea really was to hear diverse perspectives, share them, and really listen to what other people had to say, and then be able to accurately mirror back what you had heard, whether or not you actually agreed with everything that you heard. So I thought it was very constructive and very civil. There were a few cranks there who had agendas, but you know, that's to be expected. But anyway, so that's kind of how the format went. So Mitty, why don't you go on with your impressions?
So one thing I liked was I thought they had a great set of speakers. They had County Supervisor Joe Smithian. They had a woman named Shiloh.
Who had spoken to us during our
Shiloh Barrett.
Yeah,
Shiloh
Ballard.
Ballard.
They had, I don't remember her name, but she said a lot of smart things. The woman who was from an organization called Peninsula Interfaith Action.
Oh,
Yeah.
Arsely?
She was so the really good group of speakers as well.
Louise Katz, who's a community activist.
Yeah, and then those speakers actually were part of the groups that broke apart afterwards. So that was also pretty good to have their involvement. I thought the moderator also did a great job, kind of giving, making sure everybody spoke, asking really great questions. I thought it met the objective of trying to raise a little discourse on the issue.
Yeah, definitely. So Project Sentinel was really helpful, and I didn't realize how involved they've been in the disability roundtables. I talked to Anki afterward, and she indicated that they would be happy to help us with this in Palo Alto for free. And I really think we should take them up on it and come up with a format that works for us. Now, I agree with what Commissioner Al-Hassani said. It was a little disconcerting staring at everybody's back, during their discussion. And it did feel, although they were trying to make it feel inclusive, it actually felt exclusive to me. Because there's something, human about seeing people's faces, and it's harder to be part of a conversation with everybody facing away from you. And we were also in the round. So there was a center round table, and then we were all around them too. And I think maybe a semicircle or something might work a little bit. Maybe they were semicircled this way and we were semicircled that way. It would feel like we were one big circle. For example, that might be a better format. I don't know, I'm not an event planner, but that was just my psychological take on it. And I felt like their discussion didn't go on long enough. It was like over 2 hours, and only about 30 minutes of it was the panel. And I think they had such great people there with such interesting things to share. I wanted to learn more from them. So when we do our event, we may want to plan for the panel to have more of a discussion, and then find a way to integrate the audience into participating somewhat with them, and then somewhat into the breakout groups. But I thought it was a little bit too bifurcated between there was one central discussion and then we were all just into our breakout groups, and we never had a chance to interact with the panel unless you were lucky enough to have a panel member be part of your focus group. Do you see what I'm saying? So we might want to make some changes in how we do ours, and I think the 2.5 hours was also a little long. So anyway, my thoughts, but I really think it was a great idea, and I think if we partner with PAMP or Project Sentinel to have facilitators and moderators there, that this could be something that people would really enjoy participating in. And I think we should definitely move forward with planning ours for early next year. Mika looks very concerned.
No, I was just wondering if did they come back as a whole group and then share ideas from different groups? Because you said
they did, but what happened was it went on for so long that people were kind of packing up and leaving, and then the people who were doing the reports didn't really have a template. So there were some people who just went on and on and on with what their group had talked about, and then I think some groups actually never got to talk, and then there are some things I'd like to change.
So those are the learning points.
Yeah, I think that some people felt like we had this great discussion and it didn't really get reflected back in, and there was no chance for the center panel to ever respond to anything. There was just that separation of those two events.
Do you feel like there's still a need to meet with staff from Mountain View, or do you feel like they have a good sense?
I think we're good. I think it's going to be an experiment, and it may not be perfect, this first time, but I think we got the basic elements down.
Okay.
And I just know from what I experienced and watching people leaving, kind of watching the audience trends, I think there was sort of a drop-off point, because it went past 9 o'clock. It was getting kind of on a school night, so it was getting kind of late. And I just think some people were frustrated that, Joe's meeting was there, for example, and they wanted to ask him some things. Now, I don't think we want an event where people are just, like at a city council meeting where people are just ranting at our elected officials for their 2 or 3 minutes at a time. But I think that there were maybe some questions or things that there should be a way to kind of get those to the panel so that they can have a roundtable on that, and we can all partake in that and understand, their responses.
Claudia was at that meeting, so you might want to find out from her too. Why don't you meet with Claudia and just say that you were there, and
Yeah, that's actually good.
and that way she can fold it into the agenda of the, that she.
Now, the other thing, I'm sorry, do you have a question?
I'm wondering if it was filmed. I couldn't be there, I was out of town. I was actually at a mediation.
I didn't see a camera. Did you
5-day
see a
seminar.
I didn't see a camera, but this is interesting. Mountain View's HRC does it as that is their meeting. It was an HRC meeting, it was publicly noticed, and there were, comments from the public as if it were a meeting. I thought that was interesting. I'm not sure actually that I would want us to do it as an HRC meeting. I would feel more comfortable doing it as an HRC sponsored event. But that's my opinion. There might be a reason why they did it as a meeting. That actually might be something we want to follow up with them on. If that's just their tradition, if there's some reason they do it that way.
I'm thinking that, this is new, and it, in some ways, if you advertise it, it's very attractive to a lot of people, so that's the way that the HRC could actually publicize that it exists and that it's open to the public among other reasons. So, that would have that, as opposed to saying, here's an event sponsored by the HRC.
We don't get major audiences anymore.
We don't. Or whether just because they felt like maybe they didn't have other agenda items they needed to do, and that the roundtable is an agenda item all on its own. I mean, I can kind of see it, but at the same time, it meant they had to do certain procedural things that if we were doing an event, I'd kind of prefer not to have to do those procedural things. But
Can I ask, was it themed, or did it have a?
it was affordable housing.
Affordable housing.
So anyway, but I was really impressed. I thought the whole HRC in Mountain View did a great job. Kim Castro did a great job. Project Sentinel did a great job. I mean, it was a lot of collaboration and effort, but they really pulled it off. And they've been doing it for a while, so they're real pros at this. And I think if we have any questions, I'm sure they'd be happy to give us their best advice. But I think we should be brave and schedule ours and see what we can do and reach out to council members and people to be on our panel.
It'll be next year,
and see if we can figure out someone who might want to be our moderator. For this first one, I'd really love to have, as I said, that youth perspective, since the film was made by 2 young teenagers here in the community, and I'd love to have other kids participate.
No, I haven't seen it. Can I see it?
It's on
I'm working
YouTube.
with Youth Council right now. What's it called?
It's called Living in Silicon Valley.
Living in Silicon Valley, so not Palo Alto.
Well, but it's all filmed and based in Palo Alto, by Palo Alto kids. But they call it Living in Silicon Valley.
Send you the link.
It's YouTube, and it's quite short.
I think it's 12 minutes, and it was made as part of the Digital Leaders Program that the HRC helps fund through our HISRAC. And it was fascinating, fascinating film. So I'd love to have the youth perspective and maybe have the school board perspective, council perspective, really get some diverse viewpoints. I'm going to be really happy to do that. And, if things blow up, they blow up, but, it's a learning process for us, and we got to try and see what works and what doesn't work, and we can continue to refine and fine-tune what we're doing. But I really feel like our community has a lot of parallels with Mountain View, and they've been doing this successfully for some time, and I really don't see a reason why we can't figure out a way to make our events successful as well.
What I was thinking right now, at first when you mentioned the fact that it was facilitated by Project Sentinel, I thought, well, that's genius, because they've got expertise in that area. But I was thinking, I don't know how many tables there were of people, how many you would need, but to get some very good facilitators or mediators would probably be good, because my experience, even say at our Palo Alto, is you get it's a bit chaotic, and in the end you get these long reports that are very difficult to sit through, partly because they're duplicative. So to have a little bit more process control would probably be very good.
Well, there was a lot of engagement. Yeah, thank you. It was not, it was not watching PowerPoint slides or reading a report. It was a very good discussion with diverse viewpoints represented. And then I really liked the breakout group. I was actually, Commissioner Al-Hassani and I ended up in the same breakout group, but I think we had a really good discussion. So anyway, I was encouraged and inspired, and I hope that you feel a little bit more encouraged and inspired having heard our debrief of it. And I will work with staff to set a date for our roundtable. I would love all commissioners to be there if at all possible. And
Maybe have it at the new Mitchell Park. I think
I
having a cachet of a new place, I think.
I would love to have it there. I would love to have it there. So anyway, so that's the debrief. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns?
So was it in a very big room?
Yeah, it
sounds like
was
there
at
were
the senior center, which is actually lovely. I'd never been to the Mountain View Senior Center.
Haven't
It's
either.
way better than Avenida's, PS by the way.
Avenidas has their application in.
Okay. But I'm just saying in terms of infrastructure,
Well, it's also
it's a beautiful building.
Avenues is
New.
heartbroken.
not a
because they want
historic building.
Betterment.
It was a nice big room and the food was great. Shout out to Kim for that. So yeah, I mean, I think they did a wonderful job. And as I said, I feel confident we can also do a wonderful job.
Over 100 people, that's amazing.
Yeah, easily over.
Yeah, and there was a nice, and there were young people and older people and working people and moms and.
And I think we need to think that for them, that just might happen now, but I think we need to be very intentional in our invitations and just follow up and so forth.
Yeah.
And get some champions, maybe among some subgroups of folks that we'd like to see represented there.
Yeah, definitely. I really hope that, and I'll need help with this, I really hope we can reach out to the schools and the kids, because I really think that this film from a youth perspective raises some fascinating issues for the community, and I really think we talk a lot about youth and youth well-being, but we don't always let the youth speak to us in their own voice and tell us really in their own words what's going on with them, and I would love for this roundtable to give them that opportunity.
If you ask PTA Council to co-sponsor, then they will get it out in their newsletter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Thank
ask them
you.
to be a partner.
Okay, yeah. All right, thank you, Mayor Shepherd, that's a great idea, because that's a one blank area for me, is I don't know much about the schools
Yeah.
here, since I didn't grow up here and don't have kids in school here, so that's something I always struggle with. Okay, great, all right. So that's the roundtable. Let's move on to our last. Oh, are we running out of time? Okay, then we have to plan the party quick. Okay.
No, he's going to change it.
He's changing the
Oh, we're changing it now. Going on to, are we ready to talk about the party? Or did we, okay. So, and everyone's like, yeah, let's talk about it. So usually the HRC does some sort of a holiday event at our December meeting. And we've done everything from go to someone's home, thank you Claude, who's no longer with us, and last week we went out to El Fornillo and had, I think, a really great dinner / dessert / coffee there. So in talking with staff, we're kind of leaning toward, after the December meeting, maybe starting our meeting a little earlier, maybe at 6 or 6:30, and wrapping up so that we have time to go somewhere like El Fornillo for like a nice dinner or dessert or coffee together again, and just sort of relax and enjoy and kick off the holiday season. So I just wanted to see if people had thoughts or ideas or recommendations around that. What would you like to do?
Yeah, last year was nice. Just going to overnight afterwards and having dinner.
Plus Ray is known there, so I think that they just start
That's true, we do.
When we go there. And they're open late. They have quite a nice menu. Maddie, have you ever eaten at El Fornillo?
I had breakfast with Ray there.
Oh,
See?
okay.
Commissioner
Yes.
Everything.
See,
Dinner's even different.
yeah. But
I didn't even know they did breakfast.
yeah, I didn't know that at Ray either. So overnight is great because you can get dinner, you can just get a lovely Italian dessert. They have this dessert cart. And you can't just even get a latte or cappuccino if you just want something light. So it kind of worked out for everybody. They have veggie food, they have non-veggie food, you know, heavier food, lighter food. So we're thinking we might do that again if people are amenable. So if we are, then I would ask staff to make us a reservation for after our next meeting. And as I said, we may have to start the meeting early to make sure we have enough time. So if everyone's agreeable on that, then let's go ahead and let's say that'll be our holiday plan for next year.
June 11th?
December
December 11th?
December 18th.
You're off by like 6 months.
December 18th, am I correct?
It's the second Thursday.
Oh, then I must be wrong.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Okay, so then I'll work with staff on planning that and we will let you know. So just don't be surprised if the time is a little bit different next time. Okay, so party is planned.
December 11th.
December 11th. Okay, so now let's move on to our last item, which are reports from officials. So do we have any commissioner reports? So for example, people who have scheduled or have done their HISRAP site visits, if you have updates on that, let us know. Yes, Minnie?
We got 2 visits confirmed.
Okay.
Abilities United. It's going to be December
3rd.
3rd. No, sorry. Abilities United is December 12th. Yeah.
Okay.
So Abilities United is December 12th, and Commissioner Savage, Commissioner Marin, and myself are going to be there. And then Envision December 3rd at 12 p.m. We're going to go 3 sites, and figure out shuttle between the 3 sites. Opportunity Center, the Veteran Hospital,
And Haven House.
and Haven.
Okay, cool. So I have his rap site visit scheduled for Green Catchers for November 20th, and myself, Commissioner Morin, and Al Hassani will be going to that. We're going to be watching, there are 2 sessions, so we'll be coming in to watch part of the first session of tutoring. We'll get an orientation, and then we'll see part of the second session of tutoring. Barbara Kloster's been wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to seeing more up close and personal what they do. I've been trying unsuccessfully so far to arrange a site visit to Peninsula Healthcare Connection. I might ask Commissioner McKinney to help me with that. They do not answer their phone, and they do not ever return any phone calls from me, so I'm not sure what I'm doing that is not. But anyway, I cannot get a response from them, so I'd like to arrange that visit. Are there other people who've been able to visit or arrange visits? And I want to remind everybody we need to complete these before the end of the year. So where have you reached out to yours?
No, not yet. I'm trying to schedule that for the first week of December.
Okay. And then, Dion, were you the lead on any?
I'm going to do the same. I haven't had a chance.
Okay, so just remember, we have to get them done before the end of the year because we'll be going into the HISRAP funding cycle, and we can't be doing site visits while we're doing the funding recommendations. That's just not a good thing to do. So if anybody has that on your to-dos, make sure you get that scheduled. And then update us when you do. All right, any other commissioner reports? Okay, our council liaison.
I'm not sure, Commissioner Stone, did you want to give, or Commissioner Moran, your meeting with the chief?
Oh,
yeah.
I have the notes from Commissioner Savage if you need it.
I thought we had already given them.
Did you, what's the date on that email? Am
No,
I-
she said to read it tonight.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was after the last meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, no, we met. I mean, I don't know, Commissioner Moore, if you wanted to discuss it.
No, feel free.
Okay, we met with Chief Burns, and he gave us a great breakdown of everything that's going on with the police department. He said that the Palo Alto Police Department Citizens Academy is going to be finally returning, and I know he's excited about that. And Commissioner Savage is as well. So I think she's completed it before, and that's going to be sometime in the spring, this coming spring. So he's going to get back to us on dates about that. He says that our police department staffing is finally starting to get to the point where we need it. Let's see, there's only 1 opening right now, and he said that's the best it's been in 12 years. So I know he's very happy about that. Daytime residential burglaries and auto burglaries are up over the past year. And we're getting new police cars. So if you get pulled over by something that's not a Crown Vic, don't be concerned.
Pull over by a Chevy.
Yes, exactly. It's okay. But he seemed very confident with with what's going on in the police department right now. And I know we were very impressed with the amount of citizen complaints on police officers. It's extremely low. I don't know if she has them in her notes, but
Yeah, I think she did. She said only a couple were for internal.
yeah, it was impressive. So that's pretty much the highlights.
I think he discussed, also I just found my notes, he was discussing, we discussed the suicide, the issue of the project safety and the new sort of anxiety about that in the schools right now. And he said that there's a detective who's been trained in mental health who is working in some of the schools and following up with adults to try to assist.
Right, I guess going off of that, since I'm also liaison with Project Safety Net, as I'm sure everybody's heard, we had another teen suicide within the past 2 weeks. So Project Safety Net has been, I think the one bright side is always that the community gets so involved, and seeing the people on Project Safety Net and the community engagement committee that I'm mostly involved with come together and really start to get plans in place, and that continuing partnership with the school district and Project Safety Net continues to grow. So then the community engagement committee, a subcommittee within Project Safety Net, really kind of jumped on that issue right away and has been working with the school district very closely, trying to increase counselors in the schools and try to reach out to the kids mostly at Gunn who've been affected by it.
All right, great. Are there any other commissioner reports? All right, then we are moving on to our council liaison report.
Well, first off, I just wanted to note that on Monday night, we're going to be repealing our vehicle habitation ordinance. If anybody's interested in coming and commenting, it is up on the website, so you can look at the staff report. Last week, we did approve under consent calendar the early packet release, which means that packets, this is something I've been working with Jim on. Just there's a lot of anxiety in the community that we're not transparent and we don't get information out. And so they have been working on it, and they put it through policy and services. So the council packet will go out the Wednesday before the Monday. So it'll be 10 days. There will be 2 packets out at the same time, which means people will be emailing council members on 2 different packets. Usually we have one spectacular, maybe 2 spectacular things at a city council meeting, so it will be a little more confusing. The good news is, really, really good news, not only is it open, the packet will be released earlier, all city council members have to have their questions in by Wednesday, the Monday before. So you have a Monday council meeting. You have to have your questions in for the next Monday by Wednesday. And then all of those questions have to be answered by Thursday night or Friday when there's a 9/8 day. That way everybody can see the answers throughout the weekend. And then there will be no submission of questions on council day, which will free staff up for actually getting their work done for the council day, for the council night. So that should be a nice order to it, but it will mean that if there's something that the council decides they didn't think was complete, the meeting live, and they want to postpone it to the next meeting, they can't. It'll have to be postponed for a couple meetings if they can. So that is something that has been part of the ongoing, open government. Monday night, we're having a study session also on bus rapid transit. I don't know if any of you are interested in that. The VTA has gone ahead without their policy advisory committee to do the environmental impact statement for bus rapid transit. So they're in the comment period right now. This is an environmental impact statement if you know what's going on. So they're in the comment period before they go into their measurements. And there are different scenarios for Palo Alto, one of which would be to do dedicated lanes all the way up to Embarcadero Road, which would take 2 lanes out of traffic. If you get dedicated lanes, you get a green spine, they call it, of a bike path in between the 2 buses in the middle of El Camino, all the way down to San Jose, or as long as the dedicated lanes are there. This was always on the table with bus rapid transit, but the preference for VTA has always been to transition at Showers Boulevard and Mountain View out of dedicated lanes because Palo Alto is very narrow. It's expensive. They might have to acquire property along El Camino in order to do their stations, which they don't have money to do. But they might have to do it in order to match the timing to get people up and down El Camino. This is train-like buses that are Wi-Fi, sort of like a Google bus, only Google goes into their mainframe. This is just a Wi-Fi bus. It'll hold bicycles and It will be a comfortable ride. It's like light rail, only on wheels. And they have preamps for all of the signals. So, and we do have the 522 bus now, but this will be a much better version of the 522 bus. So that's something that could be very disruptive for this community going forward. We also have on December 1st a study session on fiber to the premises. And residential parking permits is coming for the framework for the entire community, and then the pilot for the downtown neighborhoods, which I'm not going to be able to participate in because my husband has a lease downtown, along with a lot of colleagues, so there's just barely enough people to pass this on our council. And then finally, the project that I did sign up for, called the Mayor's Bully Project in bullying in the schools, has been meeting. You're part of that, right? Yeah. And I'm sorry, there's a lot of people there, and it's been crazy lately for me. And we don't like the name bullying, so we've transitioned it into Choose Kindness. And we chose that name because it was part of Unity Day, which is what we decided to match the schools with, is to amplify what the schools are doing. They're doing an awful lot of bullying and social and mental and emotional well-being, but the community itself hasn't been doing much. So we're trying to figure out how we as a city can link with the schools, and the schools can link with the cities, and doing that type of amplification. So if there's something going on in the schools like Unity Day, that we actually manifest that in our community somehow. So this is the launch, and then hopefully it can become part of our systems of operations. So next year, maybe Unity Day will have some projects like the schools have had projects, and they have some really interesting projects that are something that this community would be great.
So this is right in line with the HRC.
It is, and so I don't know, this is going to have somebody, I'm not going to be here next year, and I'm not sure if there's going to be, I can see if any of the council members want to pick it up, but this is something that the schools are amazingly excited about, and because they do feel like the kids get it there, and then they go home, and there's nothing there, except for their parents, but so I introduced it to the Safe and Welcoming Schools Committee, which was very supportive of it, and so we're just continuing to meet. We'll try to get it internalized so that it launches and keeps going next year. I met with Youth Council, and I brought Mark Berman with me. He's my liaison to Teen Youth, the teens. And Youth Council, just so you know, has decided on their project this year, which is redefining success. And I think that's a brilliant project. They're excited about this. They're weary of all of the bully projects that they have at school right now. And this was before the suicide. This was the Monday actually before the suicide. And so we have been in touch with the schools. The kids at Van are walking around pretty empty right now, very empty. I'm going to go to Hay Fever is showing tonight. Tomorrow night, I'm going tomorrow night. God is doing a performance of Hay Fever if anybody wants to go. When I told Janine, the stage manager, that I was going to go, she just said, oh my gosh, please tell me and we'll announce it to everybody. And I said, great, but...
what is Hay Fever?
It's a play. It's a play.
Okay.
They're doing a play, and so her comment to me, which was really sad, was we don't feel like the community cares about us. This is just a kid, I think sophomore or junior at the gun. So I've asked them if they might want to take just a snippet of their play and bring it, perform it to Palo Alto City Council before we start our meeting, or our meeting or something, just so that we can see what's going on. So anything, if anybody wants to join me tomorrow night, I'm going to be up there. I think they have a matinee on Saturday and a Saturday evening, and then it closes. We just need to keep giving that support, but then also I think they would love to be brought into the city and make that connection as well, and just see where that goes and how that evolves. So right now with the Choose Kindness project, the city is going through all of the things that we do that are sort of routine each month. The schools are doing the same thing, going through all the routines, and we're going to see and identify which ones we want to share with them and they want to share with us, so that we can have a better connection and symmetry between the schools and the cities. So,
What time is that place starting tomorrow?
7 o'clock. I have an extra ticket if you want to go with me. So I bought 2 tickets. So I'll pick somebody up along the way. But yeah, And they said to get there early for a good seat, so I don't know what that means.
I think it's open seating, so.
Yeah, I know it's open seating, I'm not sure if you just are completely blocked all the time, or if you don't get there early. So anyway, that's what's going on with council pretty much. And then we'll have transition on the 5th with a new council coming
In January.
in January 5th.
Thank you, Mayor Shepherd. Do we have a staff liaison report?
Yeah, I have several things as well. Just to let you know, the study session with council that was scheduled for next Monday has been postponed, so the HRC will not be having their study session. We'll have it sometime early in 2015. So that was requested and accepted for the HRC. His draft application, thank you for Commissioner Bicchetti and Commissioner Chen who looked at the application that is with the city's purchasing department. We hope to be able to release that soon. Also was going to just give a little bit an update on Project Safety Net, and not so much on Project Safety Net, but just to let you know that there was an overwhelmingly comprehensive response on the gun campus the day after the student death, and that is continuing to this day. There's the normal response of ACS and school psychologists, but there are a lot of partner agencies, CAR, that are just there on campus to be there for the kids, to be there for the administrators, to be there for the educators. It's been a very trying and challenging experience, but everybody is rising to the occasion. The school knows exactly what to do. There's a very comprehensive suicide prevention and postvention toolkit that the school follows. So it's been really great as far as the response, but this has been a very hard for the gun campus, and I could very easily understand. This is a group of kids there that most of them have gone through their 4 years with not having a death that has been a public death. So for a lot of these kids, this is a very new experience, and with the young man who died, it was very well known and popular. So that's been something that I think the school and the district has been doing a really great job of responding. There was a parent meeting on Thursday night, and Spangenberg was about 80% full of parents who were there, and there was a very good panel of speakers that spoke to the parents on mental health issues and so forth. If you haven't heard, as far as the Track Watch program, that's the program of having security guards at the tracks as a deterrent, and that's the level that it is. We can't stop. There's so many access points for the track, but we hope that it is a deterrent. And those are, we currently have guards there all hours that Caltrain is in operation, and we have that at East Meadow, Charleston. We just added California Avenue and Churchill. So we have, no, we haven't had a track watch guard there. It was just Charleston and East Meadow. But Churchill was added after the first death. So I wanted to let you know that. So Project Safety Net, the leadership committee is really, mobilized.
And we have considered it a contagion.
Yeah.
So it is two, actually, right?
It's been 2 within 3 weeks, and there's been 3 deaths in the area within 3 weeks with a young woman from Woodside who took her life as well. So we are getting lots of people calling for information. I think close to 200 parents at that gun meeting signed up to take QPR, which is really positive to be able to have more eyes and ears. That's QPR is CPR. It's a gatekeeper training, so it's the CPR but for suicide prevention. I think all members, maybe not Commissioner Al-Hassani has taken it, and Commissioner Stone?
I haven't done it yet.
Okay, so anybody that wants to take it, I will let you know of upcoming sessions. We always have codes to be able to do it online. In person is always better. So that, is something you'll continue to hear updates from Commissioner Stone and I on this issue. the mayor already talked about the living in vehicle ordinance, which is going to council on Monday night
Can I
to
go
be
back to the
repealed.
suicide for a moment, just so
Yeah.
you guys understand? This was a kid who jumped out in between the traffic lights. And so it was not at a crossing.
Oh, it was just south of Charleston.
Yeah, south of Charleston. And with a very
Last train.
good experience with his
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And usually parents, when they're trying to figure out what they need to look for, this is basically one of those situations where there was nothing anybody would have been able to find. So that puts it in a high stressful situation. That's why things are really, I mean, I'm getting emails from parents as mayor, I think they just want us to line it up with Track Watch. So if there's anything you find out, or if there's anything that you want to become involved in, this is the time to get involved, because the parents are very, very worried. They don't know what to see, because there wasn't anything to see.
So, that's okay. As many of you know, the cold weather shelter at the Armory in Sunnyvale is not opening this year because that site is being raised for low-income housing. And the county has an alternative plan. We're still working on the fine touches of it, so as soon as we get the press release that really just lays it out step by step, but that will include reserve spots at some of the county shelters that are already existing, and a motel voucher for families and some singles. So wanted to let you know that it will include increased spots here at the Opportunity Center's Hotel Desync program. They're increasing by 5 spots. It will not have the capacity as a nightly capacity of a 125 at the Armory, but an alternative location for that size of a program wasn't found. But as soon as I get the details of that program, I will let you know. I sit on that committee, but I think it's much easier to have in front of you so you have an idea of how it works. So I think that's what I had on my list.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments before we move on to our final items? All right, so our tentative agenda for the next meeting, which will be our kind of holiday party meeting, we will go ahead and review the work plan items again. Make sure that the HISRAP site visits are scheduled to be done before the end of the year. We'll have a follow-up on the affordable housing report and our outreach to Hillary.
To Hillary. She's the planning.
Oh, okay. So either Commissioners Ketty and Chen will reach out to her, or I can reach out to her and figure out how we want to get in touch with her organization and work with staff to ask some specific questions of her. We think we'll have updates on the roundtable and the senior summit that will be early next year. And are there any other agenda items that people have in mind that we should toss out now so the staff can capture it for planning? I'm already thinking about desserts at overnight.
I'm thinking about spaghetti bolognese.
Oh, yeah. All right, well, leadership will meet with staff later this month, and we'll more fully flesh out the agenda. But if anyone has an item, let me know. And I think, if nothing else, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for being here.